on there?
Not yet. It's loading, but this time it had a bunch of stuff that was on there that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. I think this is it.
So it came
There
up.
we go. We are on here.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So is it on? It says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube. Am I on there?
Yep, you're on there.
Okay, good. It's finally working.
You're on there, finally working. So everybody that doesn't know what's happening here, basically we decided we've been doing a bunch of shows that have been pre-recorded and edited. And so we decided to start to go on live platforms. And today is the very first time that we are going live on YouTube, and we're going to test it out and see how this goes. So let me just get everything set up here. And by the way, when you hear this, when you listen to it on all the other platforms that are out there, the iTunes of the world, it will be edited, but we have found that the experience has been a lot better with people based on the fact that it's live and we can have some live interaction. So we'll see how this goes. Let me get a couple of things set up here, because we are 21 minutes later than we expected to be. But whenever AJ and I show up, it's always the exact right time. So welcome to the 12th episode of the Bald Avenger. I am your host, Jason Cisneros, the Bald Avenger, also known as the Bald Avenger, the tattooed guru, the purveyor of all things common sense, and a certified legend in my own mind, AJ.
It's got a title.
That's right. I'm a legend in my own mind. But for those of you that are new to the show, just wanted to say hello, welcome. This show, basically, it was started to basically cover four aspects of the world. Last couple of years, I've been going live. I haven't done anything structured. I am a businessman at heart, spend most of my time there, and then got into philanthropy. And decided that we would go and say the things that needed to be said. Right? There's a lot of PC culture out there, and I think that it takes people that don't really give a shit what other people think to be able to spread a message that deems worthy of having. Right? I've had those of you that have been watching the show, and understand that we talk about a lot of different subjects, and really the area is I want to bring a bunch of people on that have differing opinions to me. Some people are in alignment with me, some people aren't, and to show that there can be civility in conversations, to show that I think what's made America great is that civil, sane middle where you've got the right and the left that come together. Oh, banging this around, see, and they come together around an idea, saying this is my best thinking, that's your best thinking, and somewhere in the middle is probably the best outcome for most people. And so we cover the subjects of business, we cover the subjects of philanthropy, we cover the subjects of politics and vitality. And politics, you can say whatever the hell you want to. We're going to have a debate if we don't agree, and then we're going to hug it out at the end, which is the way I think things should work in politics. The reason why you have politics is so that you don't have guns, right? And so that you don't have violence, and so that you don't have the most powerful group, threatening and bullying people around. It's really a war of ideas, and not the ideas that I think is happening these days, which is the politics of personal destruction. And then on the vitality side, it's just basically bringing people on that are living real lives, running real businesses in real relationships. So we talk about, what are your hacks so that you can have enough energy to do this thing called life. This is not a, here's how you get six packs and biceps and all that other kind of stuff conversation. It's more of a, how do you on a practical level, participate in this world at the highest level you possibly can, because you got to have energy. We all know that. So I want to welcome to the show this one. I'm excited about this show. This is one of my best friends on the planet. His name is Ambuj Jain, right? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes. Yeah. You can just call AJ.
I know. And then we all call him AJ because it's just a lot easier for us Americans to be able to pronounce that, right? And I want to go through a list of some of the things, why you should be listening to him, why, and then from his credential standpoint, and then why he's become one of my best friends over the last, how many years have we known each other now? 6, 5, something like that?
6 years, yeah.
5 or 6 years. And I've been around the world with this guy, but just some of the stuff that blows me away about him. He's been on, he's been a speaker on Tony Robbins' stage. He's been a speaker. He's got an amazing TEDx out there. If you guys look him up, it's one of the best TEDx's that I've seen. And A360, he's been all over the place, but he has a lot of, I'm somebody, everybody that watches a show that follows me at all knows and understands that I have 0 degrees, right? I tell everybody I have a PhD, poor, hungry, and determined, baby. And so it's always amazing. This is what happens out in the world. You run into somebody like AJ, he's got a PhD, he's got an MBA. He was the best PhD, not just a PhD, which is he was the best PhD, student award at the university that he went to for exemplary doctoral performance. Which is, it's not just that I went and got my PhD. I was the best PhD guy in the program. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, y'all. One of the other things that he did, and I'll let you talk a little bit about your business success because I don't want to divulge anything that you don't want divulged, but he also is the founder of Feedabillion, and called me. I happened to be on vacation in Greece at the time, and asked me to come and be a part of it, and I have ever since. And it's been an amazing journey. The title is Feedabillion. We're now we've fed 4 million people.
Yes.
Right. And 4 million people that have eaten that wouldn't have otherwise eaten because of his amazing heart. So, and then that one, I want to lead that into why I love AJ. And, we traveled around. We were both part of Tony Robbins' Platinum Partner Program, and we would bump into each other every once in a while. And then we were in London, right? I think it was London. Yes. And this woman who was trying to start a business and trying to, she was frustrated and challenged and all this kind of stuff. It had to be 2 a.m. It was a Tony Robbins event, for crying out loud. It's like 2 a.m. and AJ and I had this conversation with her, and I just saw the man's heart for probably the first time, because you meet people just in passing, but I saw his heart for the first time, having all the education that he does, having all the business success that he's had, and the heart for service and the amazing family and all that kind of stuff. I just saw the man's heart pour out to this woman at a time of day when we were all exhausted, and really adding a lot of value. And that's probably the moment, like, you and your wife have your when you met and fell in love. Like I have my when I met AJ and fell in love with him moment as well. And then we also belong to a private men's group that travels around the world together in funky different countries, and we do different things and challenge each other and hold each other to a higher standard. And so I would like to introduce, and you go ahead and introduce yourself, AJ, and say anything that I missed, but I would like to introduce AJ, one of my best friends.
Thank you, Jason. When you said a lot of things already, I don't know what else I can add. All I can say is that it's been incredible knowing you. We come from completely different backgrounds, and honestly, I didn't even know anyone as close as I know you who had been through the violence and the upbringing that you had, and how you have persevered through that, and how you've had successes in businesses, and how you are passionate about helping people because and in spite of what happened in your own life. And it's really inspiring to see someone that has come from a very different background than mine and just keep at it. And we get driven for different reasons. I call it hunger, hunger of feeding people, but hunger of the self and the soul. And different people are driven for different reasons. And it's really very interesting for me to see how different people find their intensity and their hunger. And it's been fascinating to watch yours. And in the time that I've known you, it's been growing. And, we have had private conversations about our own limitations and how we view ourselves. And it doesn't matter how the world views us, but there are many times we view ourselves with blinders and limitations, and how you have worked through those, and how you've expanded, and how you've expanded the impact. So it's really been quite an honor, and it's great that you're doing this Bald Avenger podcast. And I don't know how many people see these things, but it doesn't matter, because it's a message that needs to be shared and put out there, and eventually enough people will see it.
Yep.
So
well, it's growing. It's growing quite substantially. It's growing fast, and and it's because of the relationship and the fact that we're not on here really to sell anything. It's just basically to have conversations, and one of the things that you mentioned, I'd love you to tell everybody about your beginnings, right? And thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. But let's talk about your beginning, right? Where you started, and give us a little bit of a starting point.
So I'm from India, as some of you may already know and can tell. I grew up in a beautiful family in a small town, but there was just a lot of poverty around us. We were not poor, but we were not wealthy either. Relatively speaking, we were wealthy because we had a place to stay, and we had a home to go to, and it was a safe environment. And there was our family was reputed in business, and it was a very loving environment. But what happened, I have a fairer skin compared to other people in India from India. And when my family moved to a new neighborhood when I was probably, I don't know, about 12, 13 years old, I went to this neighborhood, and there were other boys my age, and I got picked on a lot for having this fair skin, and my eyes are brown, and that was unusual. So they nicknamed me, and they started calling me Brown Cat, which was it was a derogatory type of thing. And then it was when I went to middle school, there was this guy who started spreading rumors about that he had sex with me, which was never true. And I just got picked on because I was different, I guess. And growing up with that, and it's not something that you can, I couldn't share with anyone, with my parents, with my family. It was something that it just simmers inside, and it just created this fire that I just had to just get out and be better at everything that I did than all of those guys that I just had to leave that. And the only way you could leave that in that environment was to really excel academically, because the competition is very tough. And if you want to go to college, you have to, I have to do really well and get out of town. And that's what I did. I did that, and then I've continued to do that. It's a fire that it just, I don't know how to stop. It's just it keeps going, and as it has grown, what I've seen is that there is such a need for people to feel connected, and I get so much joy from connecting with people and helping people, and there's just so much suffering people have, because people have different kinds of backgrounds, and some people don't have food. There's all kinds of sexual exploitation going on of children. There is people have emotional suffering. Millions and millions of people are taking antidepressants. There's political controversies and animosity, and more and more countries are becoming nationalistic in their views. So, we are at an interesting time in our lives, and we have to do everything that we can to reach out and do more. And some of us have had the privilege of having more, and we just have to do more and give more and help more people.
And so your fire started basically from being picked on. I think a lot of people that, that'll be watching this can identify it, right? Is that there's something that fires you up somewhere in your life. There's nobody, I haven't run into very many people that are just absolutely fine with where they are, right? Part of the human condition is advancement. It's progress. You and I, again, hanging out with Tony so much, we understand that happiness is in progress. And when you're either reversing or you're stuck, that's when most of the frustration builds in people.
Yeah.
And so advance us just a little bit in your story of when you came to the United States.
Yeah. So I came, I wanted to go for a higher education. I had 2 degrees from India. I did a bachelor's and a master's. And I was very fortunate to be in a program that was a very selective program in Delhi. And most of the people that were graduating were coming either to the States or going to different universities in England. And I just did the exam, and, to be honest with you, I didn't do very well. But there has always been this divine guidance that has sort of guided my life, and things happen better than I expect them, and they just keep unfolding. So I ended up in the States, which was very difficult to come. It was in 1982. Visas were very difficult to get. It was expensive to come. I somehow got financial aid. There was a mentor who took me under his wing, and I was 22 years old, and life was good, and I had never been by myself in an environment where you can do whatever the hell you want to do. And I had a great time first semester, and I had received the financial aid package where my tuition was paid by the university, and I had a little stipend to be a research assistant, and I was having a great time. I had met girls. In India, that was not very done. So I had a good time. And as a result, my GPA for semester was less than 3.0. And the dean who gave me the financial aid in the first semester on recommendation of my mentor, she called me in her office in January of 1983, and she's like, "What happened?" And I said to her, I said, "Please give me one chance. I'm so sorry that I did that. Please give me one chance." And that was like a thing that clicked in again. And I said, I got to shape up. Mm-hmm. And then I just started to study and work hard, and it reignited. So, there have been interventions like that have come where I was beginning to drift, and, somebody will
readjust,
come into my life, will be sent into my life to, whip me back into shape a little bit. And, so there are things like that just kept happening. And it was, and then as I was going through the MBA program, I did very well in it. And I was then asked if I was interested in applying to the PhD program. And I said, okay. I was like just organically doing it. Didn't really have a plan to do it. Just did that. And then when I started doing that, I got interviews with really good universities. And then I ended up teaching other PhD students how to get a job in from really good universities. And then the natural path of an Indian is you do a PhD and you become a professor. So that's what I did. And, in the meantime, I got married and had a kid and moved to Dallas. I was a professor at SMU. And then all of a sudden, so as a professor, you teach, you get teaching awards, and you publish. So I did that. then you do it again. So I did that again.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, is that all there is to life? There has to be more.
Right.
Because, it's that drive, it's that desire to do more and just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up getting into consulting and then left academics and just focused on consulting. And then my consulting practice was merged in Deloitte Consulting. And then one of our clients ended up hiring me. And then there was a pivotal moment at that time, because up until that time, what I did personally is what brought the accolades and the achievements and so on. I was a professor, I was a consultant. It was, my tap dance that resulted in. And day one in this job, I had, 50 plus people and that reported into me, and I was asked to speak in front of the group. And I distinctly remember I'm standing in front of the group, and for all of a sudden it hit me for the first time that what I help these people do determines my success, not what I do.
Mm.
And that was a shift. And it was a shift that has stayed with me ever since. It's really been, so it has become much more about what can I do for you and how can I help you.
Well, and that's how you live your life. And there's two things that I want the audience to catch, which was one was the intervention, right? When somebody gives you a chance, what do you do with it, right? Because I think a lot of people are handed chances and opportunities that they either don't recognize or they don't execute on, or they do execute, but it's at a lower standard because they haven't determined what their outcome is for their life in general. Right. It's amazing to me how many multimillionaire and billionaire people that I've interviewed, and you have the conversation in the beginning of their life, it's adrift, right? It's just you're sort of following some sort of unchosen path that is just, I'm going to go to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And so when somebody gives you a chance, and they say, what the hell, right? I believed in you. You had somebody vouch for you. I vouched for you, whatever that case may be. And then you underperform. The thing that I want everybody to hear what you did was you looked the person in the mirror. It wasn't the president at the time. It wasn't whether you were Indian or fair skinned or brown, whatever. It didn't matter. What happened was you had to look that person in the mirror and make that distinction for yourself to say, I got to get my shit together. Right. And so that was number one. And then number two is that shift for everybody because we're sort of focusing in on business, but it doesn't really matter. It's anything you do to generate revenue, whether you have a 501c3, whether you're a business owner, whether you're working for a business, right? When you shift from, okay, what am I doing? What can I do the minimum? This is the biggest portion of the people that are out there. How can I do the least and get paid the most? Right. And the opposite of that for any achiever, I know for myself in my life, I know for you, I know for the people that are in, our Few Good Men group, I know that people that we're surrounded with, we fall in love with the outcomes of our clients. Right. And think about it. If you're employed and you're working for somebody, you're falling in love with the outcome of your client who happens to be your boss or the business owner. And the more value add, if you have a smart business owner, you come to one of my companies or one of AJ's companies and you go, look, I want to add more value. And here's what I think I can do. Can I have a piece of that success? It's a different negotiation rather than negotiating for $1 an hour raise, for instance. You could say, look, if I put this program together and it succeeds, can I have a piece of the upside? Right. Absolutely. And that's the way the world's going. Everybody says business is fundamentally changing. Yeah, in some areas, right? Because of technology and so on and so forth. But where it's really changing is your ability to be able to take your position inside of a company and to add value and to be able to have a smart business owner have a conversation with you and say, if that succeeds, if you produce more for this company, we'll give you a bigger piece, right? Mm-hmm. And those kind of conversations are really what's changing about business. Yes, technology. Yes, there's some other fundamentals that we've talked about in previous shows, and we're going to talk about in more. But So the other side of this that I want everybody to capture what AJ just said was that you switch from, what am I getting to what can I give? And how can I accelerate into that marketplace? Because you had, again, jumping forward just a little bit, you had a giant exit from, making an hourly rate to then your next, a giant exit from a company that you built and then ended up selling. Right. So tell us a little bit about that time frame from when you made that shift to when you made a huge cash in on one of your exits.
So yeah, actually several things happened after the experience that I was describing with these employees that I had to manage. I got put into a role that was very prominent. It was a global role. I was the number 2 guy in this global company. And frankly, I bombed. I didn't do very well because I was insecure. And all of a sudden I had, $40-50 million budget. I had all these people. I was flying around. I was like this big guy and people will want to see me. And it was uncomfortable to be in that. I wasn't ready. I don't know what I was ready for or not, but I was definitely not ready for that.
Right.
And then I ended up leaving that. And then I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And that's when the .com stuff was going on. And I found a niche and spent an inordinate amount of time, money, got investors. Our valuation was 200 million. And this is something that I haven't talked about very much. And we could have raised a ton of money, and we didn't. We worked with our own seed money, and we said, we'll build it all out, and then we will have a better valuation, and we can raise more money. So we did all of that, but by the time we came back out in early 2001, we had built this beautiful platform, and there was no money to be had. It was all gone. So I ended up crashing after that. I had no money, and my wife at the time, she said, "I'm done. This is she just was not ready for any of that." So that was a very difficult period. But again, it's accepting it and then doing something in spite of it. I saw that as an opportunity to pivot and to grow and to really surrender. And I had 2 children that I had to take care of, and there was, I was living with them, and there's one night I remember it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I realized that there were no socks for my son to wear in the morning, so I had to do laundry, and that's when it occurred to me that what their mom was doing while I was flying around doing all these different things, she was holding all of this together. So I had a better appreciation for what she did and what all these moms are doing in these families than I ever had before, because it was, making the whole machinery work in the family is very difficult because there's so many different things that are going on at the same time. And it was a very difficult financial time. And I remember I had actually printed the personal bankruptcy papers. And I was going to fill them out. And it was late at night, and I was just sitting and I was praying. And I was like, what do I do? And I heard, don't do it. I mean, there's this voice that said, don't do it. And I was like, I have no option, because I had 7 credit cards that I had that were in my personal name that I had used up in the business. I had used up all of the money, and I owed, I think it was $157,000 on these credit cards. And I was not making any payments, and I was getting, 50, 60 collection agency calls every week. And I was not even answering my phone. And it was like, don't do it. And I didn't do it. And then within about a week, I got a letter from one of the credit card companies, and they said, call us, we are willing to talk to you, or we want to talk to you. And I was like, what? So that option had never existed. And I called them. And they said, we're willing to take less than what you owe us. And they said, we'll take 80%. And that's when the Indian kicked in me. And I said, 20%. And they said, 60%. I said, 25%. Long story short, we settled for 40%. So I really cannot reconstruct how it happened, but somehow I was able to corral money and settle with them. And then I took that one letter and then I faxed it to the next one. And I said, hey, I just settled with this one for 40%. What will you take?
Right.
So within 3 weeks, out of 7, I settled, I think, with 6 of them. And then, I was able to borrow some money from friends. I was able to settle with all of them. Now, here's the interesting thing about how it ties with the insurance business that came afterwards. So in the meantime, I had started consulting with an insurance company in Atlanta, which is where I am right now. And it was the chairman of the board was a friend of mine from Indianapolis. I'd gotten to know him very well, dear friend. And he knew my background, and he said, you can help us with our growth strategy. And I did some consulting work with them. And then I was going through this whole financial thing, and I got a call from him again. And he said, hey, we need your help. What are you doing these days? And I said, I was waiting for your call. So I started getting more involved in that. And I ended up becoming an officer of a publicly traded insurance company. Now, here's the most important thing about all of that. Had I declared personal bankruptcy, that will never happen. So from the time I got involved in that insurance company to the time we were able to grow it and exit it, it was 1,200% growth. And we were able to ride this, but it was not just the timing of the market. It was really building the team. It was a great management team that I had a chance to work with. And, we grew the company, and the timing was, frankly, if we sold that company now, based on the valuations that people are getting, our transaction will be probably 2.5, 3 times more than it was back then. What
was that number, to give everybody an idea?
It was $350 million for the company. It was a publicly traded company. So
nowadays it would have been in the 1.5, 2 billion mark.
It probably will be about I would say, $900 million to $1 billion right now, based on the different valuations that I've seen of that type of business. Right. So it came together. Really, there is serendipity in it. There is surrender in it. There is hard work in it. There is heartache in it. There is managing ego in it. There is, but more than anything else, it's really when there's one thing that connects all of that for me is really connecting with other human beings and doing for them and identifying what is important to them and helping them do that, whether it is the management team, the employees. We did acquisitions, and there were privately held companies, and these guys are very jittery. Owners are very jittery. That.
Yes.
You have to build a personal relationship with them. The same with the employees. We expected a lot from the employees. We paid well, but we expected a lot. And, people performed because we respected them and we listened to them and we knew what was important to them. And the same with our customers. People gave us business because we built personal relationships with these people that control books of businesses. And, so it's really about people. It's really about connecting with people. And the only way I have being able to connect with people is it's never about me. It's really about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when
I love that. And, you know, part of this journey that I want everybody to get, especially when I bring somebody on that's business oriented like yourself, is for people to understand that even in your darkest days, right, your best days are out there. You know, I remember I you know, again, my people can go watch episode 1 and hear where I was, but I mean, getting to a point where I had contemplated suicide because I just thought, I'm not going to be able to do anything with my life. Like I've tried. And it was like 3 or 4 times in business. Well, 3 times specifically that I just went bankrupt. And then I just kind of, you know, lost it. I was like, I don't know what to do. Right. I mean, I didn't have any educational background, but you did. And you found yourself in the exact same position that I was, which was broke ass. You know, we were just broke and divorced, right? I mean, you and I, it's hilarious because when people see us hanging out with Feedabillion, or, you know, when we're on our trips or whatever we're doing together, you and I could not be more polar opposite. Like, you know, you are on one end of that. You're calm, you're collected. There's a couple of scenarios where I can tell everybody that pisses you off and gets you real worked up, but I won't share those here today. But for the most part, you're very contemplative. You know, you are somebody that when you do the transactions that you do, think Berkshire Hathaway for most of you out there, that'll give you a good example of the work that he does. And you look at that and you have to be squeaky clean to be able to do the work that you do. Like your bankruptcy, like you said, would have disqualified you completely from the path that you were on to then end up selling a company for $350 million. Completely disqualified you. Any DUIs, anything, you know, anything that would have been out there that would have disqualified you. I, on the other hand, decided to fuck everything up and make sure that nobody would, you know, and I would have to do it the hard way. Or, well, I mean, your way was the hard way too, but to do it a different way for us to come together and both of us to have the similar challenges and, weirdly enough, very similar financial outcomes. Right. And so that's why I love this show, is because people can look at it and go, okay, well, if you screwed everything up, you know, on this side, but if you've got a good education and you screw things up this way, the way to your own, and it's not about you and I's success. It's about the message for other people. It's about understanding where you want to go. And another thing that blows me away, you know, when we decided to put together Feedabillion and work on that together was the level of, you know, because on my side, with the consulting side of our business, what we've done is we've taken out that sort of gambling mode, right? We've taken out, okay, well, I'm just going to go do this next thing. And we put into place what you and what I and what other people have done to structurally build their company. No matter, the same exact rules apply for everybody, for people like you, for people like me, for you to be able to build value in the marketplace that ends up paying you in terms of top line revenue that then turns into how well you become a business owner into profit. It's interesting to me that you and I went down that same path and then we both ended up figuring out what is that structure that is duplicative and gets me to my end result. Yeah. So let's go, you know, when somebody hears $350 million exit from an organization, they go, you know, that's hard to understand, hard to comprehend. Right. And I know you went on I can't remember who said it, but they said, if you want to test a man's soul and spirit, deliver everything that he thinks he ever wanted. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I want you to take people past that point when you did exit and you went on this journey of your own and what you were feeling, and then actually going back into because a lot of times, you know, people that are in business, I've seen this over and over and over again. They're one-hit wonders, right? They go out there, they swing, they just, everything lines up for them. They're successful. And then they think that they're good at business, when it just happened to be this series of events that kind of came together. And then they go about the rest of their life losing their money over time because they didn't understand this underlying structure. And they just went out there and started thinking that they were smarter than everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. My grandfather always says, Jason, never smoke your own exhaust. Right.
Mm.
It'll kill you faster than anybody else's.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about your journey after the exit.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, you know, with respect to the growth of the company, there were, you know, a lot of other people involved, and there was the board involved, and there was the management team involved. So there were, you know, I was a piece of the puzzle. I was not the ultimate.
The
Right?
soul.
So yeah, so there are, so in every situation, recognizing that I am simply a piece of a much larger uh, wheel that is churning, is managing your own ego, and that is so important to do. And knowing what I don't know is actually a skill that everybody should have. And acknowledging that I don't know that. That's how, you know, you're able to build the team together. So um, after the company was sold, I was at that point. You know, my Audrey and I, Audrey, you know, Audrey, my wife. You know, she and I sat and talked, and you know, I was approached for another opportunity, a very significant opportunity. I went through the process with them, a global company. They, you know, we went through a 3-month process, and you know, everything was done. And at the very last minute, she and I sat downstairs here by the pool and finished a bottle of wine, and just talking about, you know, what we wanted to do, what should I do. And my conclusion was that I wasn't going to take that opportunity. And I called them the next morning, and they were just blown away. They were like, "What do you mean? They were just blown away." And the reason was that I wanted to go beyond where I was, right? I had done all of this, and I just had this feeling and this need to grow. And pivot is what we call. And my, you know, Audrey was a school principal at the time, so she decided that she was going to leave that position, and she and I jumped in full time, 100% of our time into the plat world, into the Tony Robbins Platinum Partner world, and we traveled everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We went every single event anywhere in the world. We were there. We had our seats, row number 2 in the corner. That was our trademark seat.
Yep.
And and you know, I had not been a student for a long time.
Mm.
And I have written hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes. So I started to relearn. And it was so good to know that there was so much more for me to learn about myself. And it's been like peeling this onion, you know, it's layers upon layers, and distinctions have been made. And then, you know, men take longer to learn. So my wife did for 1 year, and she was like, "Hey, I got this. I really like being a principal." So she went back to being a principal.
Mm-hmm.
And I, on the other hand, to go back for 1 more year into the Platinum Partnership so that I could figure even more stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And continued on. So it's really been, the journey has been surrounding myself with people that, you know, as you go up in the hierarchy of whatever it is that we are doing, there are fewer and fewer people that can compete at that level, and that we can learn from and really be completely vulnerable with. And I'm always looking for those types of relationships and building that network. And very fortunately, you know, I've been able to do that, and I continue to do that. And it's really so that I can challenge myself, and others challenge me. And I also watch how others are doing what they're doing, like what you're doing, and you know, the successes that you're having and the other guys. and no one is better than the other, but it gives context to everything that I have done and seeing how everybody else does. And I love to read, and I am in a book club here with 3 other guys that are each extremely successful, and we get together and we pick a book a month and we talk about the book. But what we end up talking about is so much more than that. So what I have learned through this whole process is the learning never stops. And in fact, the more I've learned, the more I want to learn, because the more I realize that this knowledge is out there and it's exponentially growing. And the best thing somebody can do is buy a book that somebody has spent 5 years writing, or their entire life writing, or whatever it has taken them. And all you have to do is pay them $30 and they're willing to tell you every single thing you need to learn.
Right.
Yeah. And so this process of learning and keep going, and that's where my TEDx was. It was becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So I push myself to get to a point where I'm uncomfortable.
I think that may be the genesis of our relationship. You're like, here's a guy that's completely out of my comfort zone. Right. And it's been, and I've said to people that are very close to me as well, said it's a challenge being with AJ, right? He thinks differently. His energy's different, right? He has this amazing wife, right, that I think is probably the bigger portion of your success, but and I think that that's the genesis. I mean, of our group, a few good men, that we travel around and we challenge each other, and we'll be, sitting around the pool somewhere, smoking a cigar and challenge each other to push each other to that next level. If you'll remember, our last trip, right, was the challenge was to get the Bald Avenger Show up and running and to get out and do some comedy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was in the back of my head. I can tell you from personal experience that, I mean, I've spoken all over the world, thousands of times in front of, big audiences, little audiences, powerful people, prisons. Like, I've spoken all over the place. And when it came to comedy, it was different. Yeah. Right. It was structured. It was a one-on-one basically with an entire group of people that they're judging you, whether, by your ability to make them laugh, right. And then you drive together the other side of this, which is the fact that I want to be controversial in a way that I want to attack the stupid PC bullshit that's going on out there, plus being center right and being a center right comedian that, everybody's left, center left or elite or far left on the comedy area and as it got closer and closer to the day that I first stepped on that stage, I was like, fuck this. I don't need to do this. Like, right. I've made my money. Who am I trying to impress right now? And it flipped back to us sitting in the pool in Belize, right? Sitting around the pool in Belize, and me giving you and the other guys in the group my word. Right. And that's what got me on that first comedy stage. And
so the message in all of that for the people that are listening is, who is around you that is pushing you to be higher? Mm. And that is an important question that people have to answer.
Yeah.
And if we don't have this drive to seek more people that are going to push us, challenge us, lift us, create that accountability or this challenge, we as human beings have this desire to coast. Human beings are, by our very nature, we like comfort. Mm-hmm. And when you get comfortable, you're going downhill. Going uphill is what takes effort. It takes courage. It takes determination. fear of failing is a huge fear. What will people think of me is a huge fear, and have to overcome that and keep going. And
and a piece of that, when you say coasting, right? That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is hiding.
Hiding.
Right?
Yeah.
And the thing, I mean, you and the boys, in our group, you guys know stuff about me that my own mom doesn't, right? And there's a level of trust that, I trust, and I think everybody in our group trusts that nobody is going to use that information as leverage. We're able to be vulnerable, right? And finding people in your world that you don't have to hide shit from, right? I mean, number one, the Bald Avenger, everybody that's watching the show knows I don't hide shit. I tell everybody everything about me. But when we're in those intimate areas, I can look at other people and I can look at you in the eyes and know no matter what I say to you, you're not going to use that as leverage against me sometime down the road, right? Yes. It's a level of trust. And what that does is it draws out of me a desire to be a better man and to keep my word. And, you're on one, again, in the relationship, right? Where your marriage, and then I'm on the extreme other side, right? Which is fuck relationships, and there's that dynamic, but I can have conversations with you and the other guys that are in good relationships and really appreciate your viewpoint and look at that and question myself in that area to say, where am I just hiding, right? By living the life that I'm living, where have I decided that this is what I love, and where am I giving bullshit excuses? And I think if you can't have people in your life, if you don't have people in your life like that, you must seek them out, because I could tell you that, again, these guys that I hang out with are if you could value it, platinum, diamond, whatever, it's worth more to me than any money that anybody could ever give me. Because once you, again, as you achieve and you go to these different levels, you got to find people that think differently than you, but are trustworthy. And that becomes less and less and less, because as soon as you achieve something, people come out of the woodwork to try to tear you down because they're upset about the fact that they're not achieving. And, and they want everybody to know, oh, you better know the secrets. That's why I put out the first podcast that I did with all of my secrets in it. I wrote a book about it because nobody's ever going to have any leverage over me. Right, AJ. And the point is that if you were going to have leverage over me, it should have been many years ago before I made money. Now, no, you don't. Right. So talk to us a little bit about how that leads into philanthropy. I mean, I want to, because Feedabillion's a big ass idea. Right. And when you called me about it, I said no first. Right. I said no, because I was like, Feedabillion, is this just another fly by night? And I know you, it wasn't a judgment about you, but I get approached, as you know, every single day almost about trying to support some kind of charity, this, that, or the other. And then we had a conversation when I got back on land, and it was your commitment, and I asked you a question. I said, look, what if we don't feed 1 billion? And you said, so we feed 100,000. If that's the worst case fucking scenario, right, I'm good. Right. Right. And it was it's
100,000 more than it was before.
Yeah, that's what, and it's so funny. I mean, now that you've been in the philanthropic world for a while, that there's charities out there that are just like your friendships, that are just like your business relationships, that are judgy bitches. You know what I mean? They're just, I saw an article that got posted. You and I were interviewed by Forbes, and, we were on NASDAQ TV and that kind of stuff. And the feedback that was on there was, oh, they're doing that. Well, blah, blah, blah. Why aren't they doing more? And it's like, this is somebody that's, typing away on their keyboard in their grandma's basement, right, going, when was the last time you impacted somebody's life besides complaining about it? Right. Right. So talk to us just a little bit about your pathway into Feedabillion, and just so everybody knows, for he's the founder, I'm the CEO, just for disclosures. I am associated personally with that organization, and one of the reasons that I am is because none of us take salaries. If we have to travel somewhere, we pay our own expenses. all of the money that we have, there's, you know, some small administrative costs, but for the most part, all the money goes through to actually feeding people. So tell us a little bit about the genesis about Feedabillion.
So there was, so it's all tied to one thing really, and that is there is one difference between your reaction to that person that wrote some nasty things about Feedabillion and about us, and my reaction. And the difference is that I had no judgment on that person.
Mm-hmm.
They were simply doing what they felt they needed to do. It did not reflect at all on what we were doing, and I therefore felt no reason to defend or be upset. And that is a huge lesson that I learned somewhere along the lines, is judgment is a problem, whether it is judgment of the self or judgment of anybody else. Now, it's easier said than done, you know, because the mind is always hijacking and trying to judge. So Feedabillion came about because of that. You know, I hesitated because there was self-judgment. And I had the idea, didn't want to do it because I was scared. And the scary part is fear of failure. What will people think if we don't get to 1 billion? Oh my God. And, you know, working through that is part of the process, and saying, you know what, it's okay if it's 1 million. You know, now gradually it has gotten to 4 million, which is way more than what it was when it started out. It was zero. And, you know, frankly, where we have pivoted, where we are really adding value, is like this program that I sent you the video of in India, where in this particular community, 60% of girls are trafficked. And not just sex trafficking, trafficking. There's human trafficking, which is a much bigger problem. And they are trafficked, they're married off early, they are sold by the families, they are sexually exploited, they're sent to bigger cities where there's all kinds of exploitation. So the bad things happen to these girls. And combining with this organization that we are working with, where we came up with this nutritious powder meal that is a meal replacement, you know, providing them consistent supply of nutrition is the key. You know, anytime we want to fix poverty in any society, it starts with the girls and women in that community. That's where you're able to create sustainable impact.
Do you want to see if I can play that video, AJ?
Sure.
Okay, let me see if I can do this.
Yeah, it's a 2-minute video, so if it plays, that'll be great.
Yeah, I'll just try it. I mean, this is all experimental in the first place, right? So
yes. You can expand the screen. It's the volume is off, Jason.
Okay.
On the video, the volume icon is off. Yeah.
Can you see just the so if I expand this?
Yeah, it will just be that. Yeah.
Okay.
Volume is low. Jason, the volume is low.
Okay. Let me see if I can turn it up.
Can you turn it up on the icon? I don't know where it is set up.
Well, here's what I'll do. What I'll do is I'll go back and I'll post this so everybody can watch it, because, you know, we're not set up for that. You know, I was trying to be a technological wizard, but keep going.
Yeah, so there is, you know, there is, whether somebody is donating $1 to us or $10,000 to us, it is a contribution. It's a contribution that I'm grateful for. And people that are spending some time in helping us, I'm grateful for that. We have done this, you know, it's not just me, there's a whole group of people that are involved that care about what happens with other people. And as I've done more research around this topic of trafficking coming as a result of food insecurity, there's not a lot of literature on it. There's not a lot written about that. And I'm finding that even in America, even in our own country here, high school kids are being sexually exploited because of food insecurity. College kids are doing things that are not good for them because they have food insecurity. So we have a problem, and we are working on creating a solution where we can provide these nutritious meal packages that we have come up with to these kids. And that's why I'm looking forward to that event in Atlanta, because I want to be able to speak to the kids about that. So it's really, we've gone through our learning curve of what works, what doesn't work. We've made a lot of mistakes I didn't know anything about nonprofit, and I didn't know anything about hunger when we started on this journey. And it's been, a huge learning curve. And it's been a very humbling experience because, these kids, their lives are significantly worse than you can possibly imagine. And there's just so much suffering that goes on in our neighborhoods. I've been driving around just in Atlanta, in certain parts of Atlanta, and I look at these families where there's kids, there's 6, 7, 8 kids, and they're living in so much poverty. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's in a country where we have so much wealth. So we have to do more. We have to keep doing more. And to me, food is, food is something that needs to be done every single day. You can't solve for it once and walk away, because they're hungry later on in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, there's water problem in certain parts of the world, and, you can create a well and leave, and the water is coming for years. Food, it's a different situation. You got to provide food every day. And here's the other thing that I've learned in this whole process. It doesn't matter when it comes to kids. It doesn't matter how hungry that child is. If that kid doesn't like the taste of what you're giving, they don't eat it.
Right.
So you got to understand what they want. You got to understand how logistically it's going to work in that community. Can you use the water? Can you cook something there? And you have to work with the local people, because so that's one thing that we have done in Feedabillion, is really connect with all these different people that have the solutions in different parts of the world. And instead of reinventing the wheel, that's why we don't have any employees still.
Right.
We just kind of manage. And I would love to grow it, and I would love for us to be able to have a bigger impact. And we are refining our approach, and we're talking to more people, but we just have to keep going. It's it's not walk in the park. It's people don't just open their checkbooks and say, here, I'm writing you a check. It's it's been quite a journey, very humbling. I had thought that we will be able to have the level of successes that we've had in businesses. We can just do a slam dunk in philanthropy, and it's a different world, man.
It's a completely different world.
It's a different world. It's a
completely different world. And you can understand, you've got 50%. I mean, I had this conversation with a neuroscientist, and he said, we're structurally we're structurally built, in the brain to either be, lean towards structure, which is your conservative mind, right? And then the other half is to lean to the creative side, which is more your, if you were to put it in American politics, it's Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times on that other side of the brain, it's like, well, I pay taxes, and it's the government's job to provide, right? And then on the Republican side, it's like personal responsibility. and let me give where I want to give, because I can personally do you feel like you have a modicum of control, which is a structure issue, right? You have a modicum of a control to be able to take your money and give it to something that you've been able to vet out and that means something to you. When it goes into the government on these people's side, it feels like it's just poof, it's gone. And, they're spending it on the sexual proclivities of the African jumping frog, right? Instead of, giving it to a child who needs to eat. And then on the progressive side, it's more, look, we're going to fund that because that's where we believe that the most good is going to be done. It's centralized versus decentralized. And so you take that into account. And then it's weird because the people on this side like to show up to charities, right? And not spend anything. And people over here don't like to really put their name out that they're supporting anything and show up to those things, but they write the biggest checks. So it's a really interesting dynamic, right? I mean, we're just sort of coming at it from the perspective of what we've noticed in the marketplace and different creative ways that we've come about it from our business background that I think has been effective. I mean, 4 million meals is nothing to sneeze at, right? We're just looking for that.
So the way we have approached it is really, it's a problem that needs to be solved.
Amen.
So in the world today where we have access food, there shouldn't be 800 million people going hungry every day. There shouldn't be 40 million people in America going hungry every day. There shouldn't be a child being sexually exploited because she was hungry. It shouldn't be happening.
Right.
In 2019, it should not be happening, but it is happening. So yes, there are lots of organizations doing lots of different things, and I completely commend them. There's CARE, there's UNICEF, there is the World Food Program, there is all these, different organizations. Billions and billions of dollars are being spent, and yet the problem is there. So we can wait for somebody else to do it, or we can say, you know what, I'm going to jump in and see what we can do.
Right.
And we will figure it out as we go along.
Yeah.
Make mistakes, but we will become more intelligent about it as we go forward, as we go through the process, which is what we have done.
It's 100% what we've done. We've tried different things
and doing it, and we keep doing it. And I think now we are at a point where we have a sustainable solution that is scalable.
Right.
And that package that we have come up with, which is a meal replacement, the whole thing is 440 calories. It gives the body all the nutrients the body needs. By aligning with people, we've been able to reduce the cost of manufacturing significantly. We have something now that we can scale with.
Yeah, agreed. Well, cool, man. Well, it's an interesting journey, that you've been on. And I just find it fascinating. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have the conversation is because you're so different than me. And yet we're so much alike, right? And they give people an idea that no matter what path you're on, there's some principles that work in business or creating that thing called revenue, right? And then the thing that I have discovered in my own world is that, I was watching this debate between Dr. Zizek and Dr. Peterson about.
I started watching it.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I've watched about half hour of it.
Yeah,
Amazing.
It's fascinating. It's about two hours or something of that nature. It's a pretty long one, but they start talking about capitalism versus Marxism. That's the starting point for the conversation. But what they kind of fall down on is this thing called happiness, right? Regardless of what side of how you think society should be set up, which is centralized for Marxism or decentralized through capitalism and marketplace validity. This thing in the middle is what everybody's seeking, which is called happiness. Right. And there's a misery index that is measured off of a socioeconomic condition that says, if I make X amount of dollars, right, there's a raise of where you're happy to where your rent is covered. You've got a roof over your head. You can feed yourself and you've got the basics covered. And then after that, the more money that you make, it's such small increments to your happiness. Yeah. And in some instances, when that money is not targeted towards easing suffering or helping the outside world, it actually drops. Okay. Yeah. And that flops over to the next biggest accelerator, which is easing sufferings for someone else in the world, even if that's one person. Doesn't have to be feeding 1 billion people. It doesn't have to be rescuing 2 million underage sex slaves. It doesn't have to be this monstrous thing. It just has to be that you're taking whatever extra that you have and you're investing that with zero coercion by anybody else, because it's from your own heart. And there's another big jump in happiness when you start to do that. What I've learned, and I think what you've learned, and what you know, and I'll let you speak for yourself, but what I've learned is, if while you're trying to cover your bases, you start the process and the habit of being a giver, being a servant, right? And that's what going back to what your story was telling us, was that when you figured that part out, now you accelerate, because it's not about you anymore, right? It's not about you. And that's the mathematical equation that people are out there measuring misery and happiness. It's a mathematical equation that states socioeconomically, I'll get here. Service-wise, I'll get here. Right. And so if wherever you are, you can give now, again, feedabillion.org, you can give to our organization very easily. But if it's not that you're passionate about, whatever you happen to be passionate about, give to that. Right. And that expands. Like, one of the things that I love about you, AJ, is that every time, and you've shown me this, is that every time you expand your willingness to serve, the resources in turn show up. Right? They show up. It's not something that you can plan for, or that you can put a business plan. That's the other side of where I'm very structured, and, and I want predictable things in business, and I want to build out, all of these things that I can control. There's that other level that comes to you because of service. Would you agree? Yeah.
So what we were talking about, the connection piece, right? So there is congruency within, then that allows us to connect with outside, other people. And as that connection expands, there's a whole universe of energy and whatever you call it beyond that. Mm-hmm. And when that starts flowing, it's magic.
Right. It's magic.
I get goosebumps. See, I'm beginning to get goosebumps. It is so powerful. Mm-hmm. Because, and the only way it happens is when I have surrendered.
Yep.
And it's just pure magic. It's just.
Well, this is where you said something earlier, where you're like, the thing that I don't do is I don't judge. That's what you said, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing, there's a reason. Like, I would like to know this. This might actually be interesting. That's my logo, right? It's a red gorilla, because when I feel like anything that I'm working with my family, if it was you, if it was my kids, if it was the people that I love, the area, the underage sex slaves, the Feedabillion, all that kind of stuff, I get pissed, and it because I get the thing, and it's not that I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off that person is wasting their time in judgment. Right. And I get, and especially because some of those comments were like attacking you, and I just go, you don't know this guy. You know what I mean? You don't know his level of service. You don't, and you're saying stupid shit, right? So I'm on full-time attack mode that we get out of PC mode, right? And so that people, that we got to stop giving voice to these trolls who aren't adding any value out there into the world at all. Like, if you have something to say and you're angry about easing suffering in an area, and you feel like you're fighting on their behalf, then by all means do that. Fight with every breath you've got. But if all you're doing is trying to ease the suffering of you not facing down your own fears, and the way that you feel like you're going to add value to yourself is by tearing down somebody like AJ or me or anybody else, I say bring it on, because I'm sick of your shit, and it gets old. So, it it just gets old, and and that's how I feel. Like, I feel like, I got to be out here with this sort of suit on to take those hits so we can push back. The pendulum has swung too far. It's swung too far. You have absolute idiots that are giving it, advice and driving, opinion of people that are just spiteful human beings that are hurting in their own arena. Now, I love them on one sense, but shut the fuck up on the other. And you're just pure love like that. And I love that. Like, I respect it very much. But I'm not there. I don't know if I ever will. So what would your logo be if you had a uniform? What would yours be? Because I'll tell you what I think in my head versus my red gorilla. What do you think yours would be?
Oh man, like my logo. Oh man. What it's very interesting. So I think of a logo. So back in India, we had a shop. Our family had a shop, and in the middle of the shop was a logo, and the logo was of a lion and a deer drinking water from a stream, which was they were drinking water from the same stream, a predator and the prey.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So and that is like the underlying principle of Jainism, Buddhism, nonviolence, right? Which is where Gandhi learned from, and Dr. Martin Luther King learned from, and just the whole principle of nonviolence and tolerance.
Versus Jasonism.
Versus the attack. So so what you are signifying in that is attack,
right?
But in your mind, you're not signifying attack; you're signifying protection,
right?
So that's the difference.
It's a good indicator. Yeah, that's a very
in your
good
mind. It's you're not fighting for the sake of fighting. You're fighting against injustice.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in an attack mode, but it's not really. You're more in a protection mode.
Right.
And
it's a good distinction.
Right. And whereas what I'm describing it's really more about harmony. It's more about balance and more about flow. It's more about congruence. But that doesn't mean that if somebody was attacking me or my family, I will become the protector as well. So I have that in me.
I've seen it a couple times.
So
comes out a little bit better after a scotch. Well, so I love that viewpoint. So let's move on from that and let's talk a little bit about politics, because and I know, prior to us coming on here, you said you basically keep quiet about it. And again, I respect everybody's whatever they want to dive in, whatever they want to say. It's just that again, I come at it from the perspective that the whole idea of this show came together because of the war that was happening between people during the 2016 election, right? And people that I knew, that I loved, that were just going at each other and ended up not being friends and all this other kind of stuff. I was like, wait a minute. That is not what is supposed to be happening, right? That is not the way that this process is supposed to work. But you step back and you go, okay, well, if one side believes the other side is evil, what would you do, right? What would you do to stop them? And the answer pretty much is, if you believe that in your heart, it would be anything. It's the same exact thing when I go out, and do these missions, for these little girls. There's nothing that I won't do. Right? There's nothing that I won't do. I'm in that position because I believe the purveyors of it, the people selling them and the people that are using them are innately doing an evil act, and they're taking something that isn't theirs, i.e. the innocence and the freedom of a child, and forever altering their life forever because they've turned them into a commodity. Right? And that's why the Feedabillion plays into that, because people need options, and if you can keep them, fed, that's a big piece of
prevention. Up. It prevents it.
Right? It prevents it. It's a step before, right? There's steps after. There's the act of rescue. There's all of the different things that are on concert. That's where I spend most of my time, bringing all of those pieces together. So eventually, if we can shame people out of smoking, we should be able to shame them out of using children as a commodity, for their own sexual proclivities, right? Yeah. It's just it's kind of a no-brainer for me. So tell me a little bit about, what are you thinking about our political climate right now?
The political it's pretty fractured. I mean, there is it's very interesting. There is a lot of there's a lot of noise, and in that noise, what is not being discussed is there is progress being made.
Mm.
So the system, one of the one of the reasons why I wanted to come to the States and what I've appreciated about being here is that the people, the democracy, the system is larger than any one person. And, several years ago, 2-3 years ago, we had a chance to meet with President George W. Bush, W.
Yeah.
And he made a comment that he said the presidency is a lot bigger than the president. So it's the institution is bigger than the person that occupies it. And that is true of all the other systems that are the country, the growth of the country, the GDP. I don't know if you saw the number today. It came in at 3.2%, which is a lot higher than it was expected. So progress is being made. There are the whole thing that got passed last year about the economic opportunity zones. That over the next 10 years is going to have a significant impact on economic development in poor communities in the country. Not many people are talking about that.
Right.
So there is progress being made, but so much of the progress is being lost, and the conversation about that and the celebration of that is being lost because of the noise that we have right now.
Yeah.
And it's
the loudest, most ignorant people on both sides, to be really honest with you, on both sides, right? It's the loudest, most ignorant people that give the ideal. I mean, you and I are in business. You and I are heavily involved in philanthropy, and we're dealing with gay, black, white, straight, married, single. We're dealing with everybody, and we deal with everybody from a perspective of love, right? We come together around a commonality called service. And there's no judgment in that area to, again, the idea here is that we've got to bring this sane voice back, right? You and I could not be, again, I've said it 3 times, you and I we could not be more different human beings, right? But there's a commonality in that we want the best for our family, we want the best for our country, we want the best for ourselves, we want the best, and we want to apply those principles that we know have worked in our own lives, and then to teach that to the generations that are coming behind us, right? So you get a quarter like this, 3.2%. You've got the economic development zones that are going to transform cities.
And there's, the last year, the work that they did in the justice, in the criminal justice process, right?
Yep.
So that will free up a lot of the people that are in the jails that should not be in the jails. So there's progress like that is being made. Whether you're a Republican or anti-Trump or liberal or extremely liberal, it doesn't matter. We should be able to have a conversation. We should be able to celebrate what is working and fix and talk about what is not working.
Yeah.
And we cannot come up with solutions and implementation of those solutions unless we are able to have these conversations. The society is going on. We are a $20 trillion economy, and every day people are living and doing their jobs, and I'm seeing more and more that it is hard for people to make it work. I mean, there are young men that I know, my son, nephew, there's another kid that I mentor. It's hard. for them, they're working full time. They are working hard, and it's hard for them to make it all work financially.
Yeah.
And there are people that so there's a legitimate concern that you see in the media about three families control more wealth than 4 million families in America. I saw that today. Or the concentration of wealth in the top 1% compared to the bottom 50% of the country. Those statistics are accurate. There has been more wealth created by the wealthy in the last 30 years, and the wealth of people in the lower half of the country has gone down. Their earnings have gone down on a real basis. So, we have, we are, there is the gap is increasing, and we need to address that, whether we are on the right side of the equation or the left side of the equation. Now, I'm not advocating that we give everything free, that, there is a proposal for that education should be free, housing should be free, healthcare should be free, and some of those other principles. The issue is there are people suffering. There are people suffering not because they're lazy, but because of the circumstances in which they were born.
Right.
And you don't believe me? Go in south side of Atlanta and go to those schools, and you will
Which is exactly what we're doing May 10th, by the way. We're going to be doing a Power of We in Atlanta. AJ is going to be there. And we did it in Chicago, and it made a massive difference. We bring these kids out just to get, even to give them another vision of what's possible, right? We do a red carpet and they're the stars, right? It's not some other people walking the red carpet. It's them, so that they can get a different perspective. And then they hear from speakers that people pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go see, that go there and donate their time for these kids, to give them a different perspective. And I think that with the economic development, those type of things, I think what is missing a lot of times, AJ, in business, in charity, in government, is a lack of vision. What's the outcome that we're trying to produce? Okay. Because after 200 plus years of this country, you've heard Tony say it a million times, success leaves clues. Well, so does failure. So if there's some loopholes that need to be closed to more right size the distribution of wealth, fine. And that doesn't mean you have to go completely to the other side, which is socialism, which is just distribution of power goes from money to centralized government and control, because the money goes there. It's just it's trading. It's one devil for the other devil. Right. And if you don't happen to be on the inner circle of either one of those, you suffer. Right. And so the ideal behind our country, and I think the founding fathers, which I've, researched in depth, is the idea that you're able to achieve according to your own talent, unhindered by the intervention of a oppressive government. Mm-hmm. Both on your religious, your sexual preferences, your way you make money, and that type of thing, to free it up. And what I know about human beings in general is that when they see people suffering, they give. You stepped in, and they're some of the biggest warriors that are out there are people that came from nothing and then ended up making something financially, and they spend the rest of their life giving back. If I do that the rest of my life, I'll die a happy man.
Right. So the argument is, what you said earlier, the ability to accomplish. So the person is able to accomplish to their ability. The issue is that somebody's ability is impacted by their circumstances. Mm-hmm. And
the opportunity.
Or the opportunities that are presented to them are impacted by where they grew up and what happened in their lives. So there is the ability is impacted by variables that are beyond the control of that one person who, as a child, born in a certain level of poverty, and what happens to them in their lives, what level of education they're able to have, what they're able to accomplish in their own lives, their emotional fortitude, their ability to handle stressful situations, coping skills. There's a lot that goes into becoming a person that you can say, yeah, I did this, and therefore everybody should be able to do that. That's not entirely true.
Yeah.
There is, so there is, it's a complicated, it's complicated. We are a country of 320 million people. So there's a lot of complexity in our society. We have immigrants, we have, different religions, we have different races. I mean, it truly is a melting pot. I'm an example. So but it's beautiful. There is a level of entrepreneurialism. There's a level of work ethic. There is, travel around the country, going to the cities and communities. As much as there's this argument about left and right and so on, you can right now go to Starbucks and sit on this bench with 15, 20 other people, and everybody's getting along.
Right.
But if you look at the media, or if you look at social media, you think that we are at war with each other. But that's not true.
Right.
People are getting along. People are not fighting against each other on the streets or fist fighting. Society is moving on. Right. And, so I don't know what the solution is really. It's,
well, I could tell you what, there is, I don't believe there's one solution, just like I think that there, like you were mentioning, 300+ million people in this country. The idea is for all of our ideas to come together in some format and to have these types of discussions. Our conversation has been somewhat philosophical and somewhat practical, right? There's some practical application of what we talk about. Some of it's philosophical, but at the end of the day, what if you and I disagree, which we have on things before, we don't want to, I don't have to pull out my knife and stab you, and you don't have to pull out your gun and try to shoot me. Right. It's just, as reasonable human beings, we say, I get it. So I wasn't convinced out of my position. You weren't convinced out of your position, but I have respect and honor for the person that I'm having the conversation with. That they have the right to live. They have the right to their opinion, and they have the right to, to their pursuit of happiness, which is, the Constitution. It's the pursuit of happiness, not the guarantee of it. It's not it's not a check that's written to you. It's not a house that's given to you. It's you have the freedom to pursue your happiness, whatever that means to you. And my belief is that the more you educate yourself, the more you listen to these kind of podcasts, the more you get around people. And like AJ's done in his own life, he continues to gather people around him that have things that he doesn't quite have. He wants to learn those things, just keep growing. It's that forward progress. And I think that's the message. So let's move on to the last thing, because I want to honor your time. And, in the last 8 minutes here, just tell us a little bit, because again, in all of this, in the business, in the philanthropy, in the politics, that takes energy, right? And I like to talk a little bit. I just like to ask the people that I've been speaking to, what are your health hacks that help you navigate this life at the highest level that you've been able to possibly do it? What are some things that you do that anybody can do to be able to raise your level of mental clarity and your energy level to do your life?
So rituals are important to have. And mine are, I make sure that, this watch has been very helpful to me in making sure that I have not missed my commitment since the day Audrey got me this watch, which was almost 475 days ago. So I make sure that I'm standing the 12 times. I'm making sure that I'm working out the 30 minutes. I'm making sure that I'm achieving the calories that I've set to achieve every day. So that's part of the ritual. The other part of the ritual is meditation. It's important for me to be centered and calm and feel connected. And I meditate I create time for meditation a couple of times a day, but I also am aware of the mind and the thoughts that are going on. So over a period of time, I've been able to create that awareness. So I live more or less in a meditative state, if that makes sense. But it took a long time to build up to that,
Sure.
and it's still a process. It's still a mess. And then the other thing is really about food. In terms of nutrition, it's good to indulge every now and again, but ultimately, on a regular basis, what am I putting into my body, and what am I, what am I doing to take care of the system, and just simple things like drinking water. And I've done research, and actually I've done testing, and I found that most bottled water is the alkalinity has been peeled away from it. So it's really bad to drink bottled water, because the alkaline it is 4.5 under 5 alkalinity, where your body needs it for it to be 7.3. So I drink alkaline water. It's really some of those shifts that spending time with Audrey, and when spending time together, and taking downtime and protecting my time with her and the downtime. It's in being mindful of that, because there's always so much going on. So when somebody talks to me, I'm talking right now, people get the perception that I don't have anything going on.
Which is quite the opposite of that. Yeah.
Because they think that, I'm literally sitting around doing nothing all day, and, life is just going on. I mean, there is a lot going on. It's how I handle it, how I react to it, right?
Yeah. And, well, we had a conversation where, we're doing this next impactor competition, and I'm a coach for a team. And it's interesting because, the idea is that we're coaching up and we're training the next impactor, right? And it's like, if it's like a competition, like a singing competition, like, the X Factor or something like that. And they're moving through these challenges. And one of the first things that I identified was that as a beginning impactor, one of the things that I kept hearing over and over and over again from everybody was, well, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Okay. That means you have a bad relationship with time. Right. And
also, people, it's a badge of honor. People, for some reason in the society, people feel rewarded for complaining how busy they are.
Right.
The truth is that, most people that I have met that are truly accomplishing a lot and have done a lot, I've never heard them complain about being busy.
Yeah.
It's just whatever needs to be done. Just do it.
Yeah. You and I speak to
each other. Broadcast to the world how busy you are.
Right. Because it is a mysterious, non-connected piece of data that does not indicate how successful you are. Right. It's counterindicative to me. When somebody's running around and they got like a chicken with their head cut off and they're spouting off all the time about how busy and they don't have time, it's counterindicative to me. What that says is that person is actually not successful, right? They're having a challenge with the enjoyment of life. And you and I, whose schedules are ridiculous, we speak to each other. We don't say I'm so busy. What we do is we say, when are you available on your calendar?
Right.
And sometimes that's a month away.
Right.
Sometimes it's a month away, but it's not a matter of because we're busy. It's just a matter of we're accomplishing. So, well, thank you for that. I think that
and sleep. The other thing is sleep. It's
sleep.
Really it's not the amount, it's not the number of hours, but the quality of sleep. I think it's important to really have a deep level of sleep, and it comes from, again, if the mind is racing and people have a hard time sleeping. So that's the other thing that people are suffering from, is people are not sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads to depression, that leads to fatigue, that leads to weight gain, that leads to metabolic changes in the body. So, we have only one life, one body. We have to take care of it.
You have to take care of it. And for everybody, I was dealing with one of the, as I introduced you to her, actually one of the top brain docs in the country, right? And one of the things of all of the protocols that that she talks about for enhancing your ability to optimize your own brain, one of them's breathing. Simple in 4 seconds, out 6 seconds, right? Because a lot of times when you're breathing shallow, you're breathing in more than you're breathing out, which creates a carbon dioxide imbalance in your system, which affects your ability to think, it affects your ability to digest, it affects every functioning portion of your body. Is if you're not breathing correctly and you're breathing from your chest instead of your belly, and you're not on that 4 out, and not, when you have breathed incorrectly for so many years, that there's something called muscle memory, right? And so whatever that breathing is, if you instantly switch and say, okay, I'm going to do 4, I'm going to breathe in 4, I'm going to breathe out 6. Then, I told somebody that, and she was like, I'm so pissed off at you. I hyperventilated, because she wasn't used to the proper rhythm of breathing. And in your meditation, your breathing is always very calm, right? And I think that leads to better, thinking. And a lot of people think they've got to be in an agitated state for production. It's exactly the opposite. You think of the airplane pilot that's out there, and and you feel a bump, and all of a sudden they come on the over screen, they go, "Oh my God, what the hell was that?" Like, how calm is that going to make us feel in the back of the plane with no control over it?
Right.
If there's a dive or something like that, they become calmer. Their heart rate actually reduces. Their breathing becomes more controlled under a well-trained pilot, I should say, under the more stressful situation that they become. And so that should be a big indicator to us that aren't pilots, to say that we can navigate the stressful moments and times in our life better when we're calm.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I love that. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, brother, and I knew you would. It's been a very interesting conversation, almost 2 hours,
Yeah.
But, in the past, the time has passed as usual. You and I can sometimes sit and speak for 5-6 hours at a time and not know where the time went. But I'm glad everybody got a chance to meet you. I would love for them to go to feedabillion.org and check out the organization and find out more about AJ and following him and the things that he's doing. There may be some cool stuff that's happening with him and I here in the future. So just pay attention to that. But thank you for your time, brother. I know it's your most valuable commodity. And, and I love you, and give Audrey my love. And I can't wait to see you on the 10th. And, everybody that knows that's coming to see me speak in Atlanta for the Power of We on May 10th, AJ is also going to be there, and he's going to be doing a talk about Feedabillion and talking to the kids as well. So that's where you'll be able to catch us. Thank you all very much for joining us on the very first actual live broadcast on YouTube. And you'll want to please share this out to the people that you think will gain value from these conversations. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you know all of the things that we're doing, and keeping up with my schedule and where I'm going to be speaking and those types of things. I appreciate all of you being a part of the Misfit Nation, watching the Bald Avenger. It means everything to me, and it's growing at a giant percentage because of y'all and because of your engagement. So I appreciate you all very, very much. I love you very much. Thank you, AJ, for being on the show. Any parting words of wisdom for everybody?
Love yourself, really. It's the most important thing to do.
Fantastic. Great advice.
Starts with the self.
Amen. And we'll see you all on the next episode of the Bald Avenger Show. Peace.
Take care.